And I just gone through a breakup after like an almost 5-year relationship. And I remember immediately like bad mouthing myself, what I wasn't enough of this. I didn't do that. He didn't want to be with me because even though it was a mutual breakup, I was giving myself this whole negative narrative. And I'm like, what? Why am I talking to myself this way? And I knew then that I didn't love myself enough. Mm-hmm. That kind of began my quest for like self-love, self-care.
If you're someone struggling or relating to the topics that we're talking about now, and you're feeling the anxiety or the stress or the pressure of feeling like you're running out of time, you're behind, and you want some extra support, check out my group therapy practice in Midtown Manhattan, NYC Therapeutic Wellness. We have an amazing team of clinicians ready to support you in your journey, to help you feel more grounded, to help you feel more grateful, to help you feel like you're just exactly where you need to be. So check us out at www.nyctherapeuticwellness.com.
I am so incredibly grateful. I'm still giddy because I haven't seen Allison in so many years, and she walked through the door and I just screamed. So I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation. It's very different for us because Allison's a former client of mine, and we've had many intimate conversations, but not with anyone there but us, and not in front of cameras. So this is a new situation for us. But I was just saying to Allison off camera how I am going to get chills. I was looking through our notes, our session notes, to prepare for today, because I think your journey is so incredible and transformative, and there's so much inspiration in it and so much to share with the audience about just the power of therapy, the power of finding your voice, the power of getting aligned with what's true to you and what you really want. And I want to talk about that all today. But I was looking through our notes and I was like, holy God, like we did some work.
We worked.
You worked, but it was just, I felt so proud going back through those notes, and we no longer work together. Life has changed. I know we're very sad about it, but we get to be here together today. It was just incredible to prepare for today and go through all of that. So welcome here in this very different space for us, but I'm so happy and very grateful. It was a journey for you to get here today with the rain and the traffic and all the things, but we're here.
We made it.
So welcome. So lots to talk about. Where I want to start is where we started together. Many, many years ago. And, a lot of what we talk about on the podcast is like these societal milestones and like the vision and what it should look like. And when you came to me, you kind of, that was happening in your life. And you, from outside perspectives, had it all. You had the fiance, you were a homeowner, planning a wedding, planning a life, and things changed. So maybe we could start there, because I think, again, like, outside perspective, one would say, this is the dream. You have it at the time you're supposed to have it. This is the way it's supposed to look.
It's so interesting to think back on that time, because I know where I was with having the fiance, having the house and all that. At that time in my 30s, it felt like it was literally a checklist come to life. I had made this checklist. I was like, I want these things and here they are. And what I wasn't putting on that checklist, what I wasn't prioritizing was, how does this feel? Is this right for me? Is this aligned with who I am? And in the end, it really wasn't. And it wasn't, I don't know that it was necessarily the structure of it, but in my relationship, we weren't that happy together. We discovered after living together that we weren't compatible.
And buying a home together.
Which is big, a home that we bought together. And it's like, okay. And then there was a period where we were still living together.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh my gosh. That's right.
And it was like the breakup, the movie. And it was tough. And and I knew for a long time that the relationship wasn't working. And I just kept going. I felt like, we've invested this much time. I should try to make it work. I'm this age, I should be, everyone around me is doing it. And I was like, relationships are hard. Let me figure it out. But I just felt not just in my relationship, but in other areas of my life that I wasn't living authentically. I wasn't stepping into who I saw myself to be on the inside.
Yeah. And I think that's so incredible. You've said so many incredible things. I think that's where we started. And I think what makes me so proud is I know that we got to that. We got to you knowing what was authentic to you, listening to your own voice. So that journey has been incredible to be part of. And I love what you said about checking the list, because I think a lot of us live that way until we've like checked all the things. And then we're like, wait, I'm not happy. So I would be curious, like what informed or who informed the list? Like,
that's a good question. It definitely, let's see, who informed that list? It was societal in many ways. Yeah. It was almost numerical. It was like, okay, I need this. And it
by
felt
by this age,
by this time to do this. And I think it was coming from me. It was coming from a place of, this is what I should have to be respected.
Wait, do you remember the one word I always hated in therapy? Should.
Should and fine.
All my clients would get so used to no,
shoulds. Yeah, I was shoulding all over the place.
Yeah,
I was like, I should have this, by this age. And I think also like in my family, that was what was expected of me. And, among my friends, that's what was happening. And it felt like I was being left out. Of certain conversations
or left behind,
like I wasn't. And even though I wasn't fully happy, there's also such a culture of misery,
right,
in our world that like there's plenty of company. There's a place to fall back into if you're not happy, and know that you're not alone, and it makes you feel okay.
But I think there's also this thing too that like other people can't hold space for your happiness, right? If you step outside of that checklist or you do something different, there's this, maybe unspoken envy or projection, because they're probably miserable and they look at someone that's like brave enough or courageous enough to like say, I'm not happy and I'm going to change that.
Yeah.
So I think you become like the outlier, or your projections land on you because you're just like, I'm not going to go down this path. I'm not happy.
Yeah. No, I knew that, and I knew it in the way that I would interact with other people, in the way that I showed up for myself creatively, professionally. Like I felt just shy of like this person I knew I was. And so I knew it was time to make a change.
Tell me about, I don't know if we've ever talked about this. Maybe we did, but your decision to come to therapy.
Yeah.
What was that sort of decision-making process, like that readiness to maybe start to heal or start to discover who is authentically you?
It was a long journey, really. Like I remember the first time, I think it dawned on me that I didn't love myself enough. I was much younger. I was in my late 20s, and I just gone through a breakup after like an almost 5-year relationship. And I remember immediately like bad mouthing myself, what I wasn't enough of this. I didn't do that. He didn't want to be with me, because even though it was a mutual breakup, I was giving myself this whole negative narrative. And I'm like, what? Why am I talking to myself this way? And I knew then that I didn't love myself enough. That kind of began my quest for like self-love, self-care. And then I fell in love with a man who then passed away.
Yeah.
And I think immediately following that, I went into therapy out of desperation, out of like, I've completely fallen apart. I've lost my sense of the world.
Yeah.
And so, I started there, and I think I was just kind of grinding, I was in New York. I went back to, I was still working. I won't say back to work, but I felt like I was well enough to return back to my life as it existed, which I think I still wasn't fully convinced was for me. But I was like, it's here. These are the things I can glob onto. So
and it's comfortable and it's what you know and it's familiar. And after such grief, like you gravitate back to that, even if it's not the place that's like totally fulfilling or making you happy.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. I was like, this is good enough. And
ooh, good enough.
Good enough.
It's like, I feel like so many people live in the good enough. Because it's so scary to go after something better. It can be so scary. But this is why your story is so great, because you've gone after a lot of things and we'll get to that. But yeah, good enough is not good enough.
It's not.
No.
It's not. Because it ultimately led me to a place. So the thing that's interesting is I feel like what's for you will find you. And I was in like a professional development workshop. And it was really great. And we did a couple of exercises. I was assigned a coach. And in that, we had this exercise. I think we've talked about this, where she had me list out the things I value and give them like a numeric value. And then in the next column, she said, give a numeric value to how much you are living this value.
Oh my God. Yeah, I remember this, but we did a ton of value, ton. I'm sure you still have all the.
Oh, I did. I live by. I live by. So I remember how jarring the difference was.
Right. To look at it and be like, oh my God.
I was like, I am not living my values. The things I say I value, I am not actively living. And then I felt great after the workshop. It was like, we had like a retreat, like a week-long retreat, and I felt amazing. But I knew inside that this won't last.
Yeah.
That this is a fleeting moment because I'm surrounded by people pouring into me, but out there in the world, there's that voice, that inner critic.
Okay, wait, let's talk about this because I wanted to bring this up.
Yeah.
I want you to share with everybody here what we came up with to deal with that, because I love this. This was like so great.
The bouncer.
Their bouncer at the
door. Listen, my life is an exclusive club.
Exactly.
It is a beautifully designed, chic place to be, the place to be. Yes. And everyone's trying to get in, but you need a bouncer. You need a bouncer at the door.
Whether it's people's energy, your own narratives, your inner critic. Yeah. And I just love that we came up with that, because when you would go to this place where the inner critic was getting loud, I'm like, girl, where's your bouncer? Like, she's sleeping. Bouncer. Yeah.
My girl. Yeah. The bouncer.
And you'd be like, back. He's not been on his game.
Yeah. 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 I had to get a new bouncer. but yeah, the bouncer really just helped me give it a visual.
Yes.
A visual, manifestation of it. So I was able to say, okay, this doesn't belong in my life. This doesn't belong in my life. And a lot of it was people, but a lot of it was also me.
A lot of it was,
thoughts.
Yes.
There were so many, and I'm still weeding them out. The bouncer is still working hard.
Make sure he's on overtime. Get him going.
Like hiring like a backup too, because it's tricky, these voices and where they come from, and some of it, like I realize, is like just passed down from generations of my family. And it's like, I see my same battles. I see it happening with my mother. I see it happening with my sister. I see it happening with my aunts. And I'm like, I'm starting to see it in the next generation with my niece.
I was thinking about your niece.
And I'm just like, oh, we got to get this. We need this bouncer.
Yeah.
And all the bouncers' friends.
All the friends.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's so incredible about you doing the work, right? Because then it's, you can share or you can start to change the narrative for people or other generations.
That was a big thing too in the family. A lot of the work that we did together was setting those boundaries within my family.
Yes.
And it has really shifted the dynamic, and it allowed us to talk about things in a way we hadn't before, and
you were such the driver of that. I really think that you were. I think that because you've done your own work, you were doing your own work, there were ways that you were able to cultivate conversations within your family that probably wouldn't have happened before. No. And that's something to be really extraordinary. It's so proud of. Yeah. Okay. So you're healed, but you have this workshop. You're realizing the values are not aligned.
Yeah. At that point, I knew I had to get serious if I wanted to break through like the me that's on the inside. That's just like, let me out, you know? And I think it was a combination of like having that information and getting that clarity of I don't belong in this relationship anymore. There's something else out there. I need help getting there. I need help understanding why I'm in my way in certain regards. And so I just started looking. I started, reaching out, and a friend of mine recommended you.
Who I also love.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And I've had such a great journey with you. You've helped me see so much and helped me like make some major decisions in my life.
Major. And I want to get to that. And it's such an honor to be in my seat, because to watch people really commit to the work and then the transformations that happen, and just the privilege of seeing all these parts of people. You come to therapy, and if it's a good therapist in a safe space, I get to see sides of people that maybe they aren't ready or feel safe enough to show into the world, and just really cultivating that and allowing that to show outside session. And I saw all the potential in you, but it's meeting someone where they're at and getting them to the place where they can see themselves the way that I see them. So again, I was looking at our notes. I'm just like, oh my gosh, everything that we did. So yes, major changes. One being we're in LA filming now, and you always wanted to be out here.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first big changes.
It was 2019.
I know, right?
Like breaking up with the fiance. Well, it was mutual. We what was it? Consciously uncoupled.
Yeah. What was I'm just curious before we go into the move and the courage to do that.
Yeah.
What were other people's perspectives on you ending that relationship, right? So you have this picture, you've checked the boxes. Maybe to a lot of people around you, you're happy, you're on the path we're all supposed to take. And then you make this mutual decision. Did other people have opinions about that? Or did they support?
I would say it was a mix. I feel like there was support from people who knew me, really well. But there was also people who knew me really well. There was this kind of, when is she going to settle down? We were so close. Oh, I liked them. What happened? And, there was a little bit of both. Yeah. I will say, I did get enough support though. And I will say, like, the most important person is always like my mother. And she was, I think she was sad about it, but like what followed, I think, got her very excited, because I think she's always kind of she always wants me to be happy.
Sure. I mean, any mom
would want me to be happy. And so she was, she was supportive. She was supportive, which meant a lot.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Okay. So we started our work, and then 2019, everything changed. Yes.
We ended the relationship. And then I remember this was at the top of the year. And then I remember a couple of weeks later thinking like, okay, what do I do now? Like, I don't want to live in this house. Like, we were like, oh, do we sell the house? I ended up selling my share of the house. And I was like so unexcited about just getting another place in Brooklyn. I was like, oh my God, so much. And then I was like, wait a minute. I've always wanted to move to LA. What is holding me?
Yeah.
What is holding me?
Well, now, really, I mean, your family.
And that is still hard, but, I still go out and visit them. But
this was a dream for you.
A dream for me for a long time. I would go to LA all the time for work. I work in TV and film. So I was always in LA. And the weather's nice. I mean, you just can't beat it. So I was like, you know what?
Except for today.
Where it's like
downpour.
Flooded roads and everything. I'm like, what? I lied to us. It doesn't rain. And so,
oh, Shelly and I were in all our glory yesterday because it was so sunny. I was in a tank top. And I'm, from New York, and I'm like, it's freezing there right now. Yeah. And then I woke up and heard the rain, and I was like, oh man. But hopefully we'll get some more sun while we're here. I hope so,
you need that California sunshine. So I started looking for jobs out here in LA, and I got a job. So I quit my job. In the same year, my parents broke up.
I know. Yeah.
Which was like, what?
God, as you're talking, like I have such a visual memory. I'm just like remembering all the sessions and all like the job interview process and like the news of your parents. And yeah.
It was a process. I mean, the job interview process was a bit grueling too.
Yes.
Several months.
I remember.
I was like, there's one job I was like so close. It's me and 2 other people. And it took like, I'm not kidding, like 5 months of interviews. I even was out here in LA for work. And I'm like, let's interview in person. And like, didn't get that job.
Yeah.
But there was another job that it was actually a better fit for me that I did get. So, and then when it was time to go, it was time to go. And so this was like August of 2019.
Yeah.
And my mother and I
road trip
2.5 weeks. We could take a road trip across the country. So that was like amazing. And like, that was like everything to me. Like, I was like, all right, it's all systems go. I'm leaving one job. I'm starting another job. I'm moving across the country. Luckily, the job had like relocation benefits. I was able to get support. And then it was like, finding a place, getting a car, becoming a California resident. Like there were so many things to do that I was just like, and I was so excited to do them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like, okay, let's go. Let's start this new life. And like settling into LA just felt like I felt free.
Yeah. And I remember that time for you too. I know there was some like housing situation things that came up too that were stressful, but I remember that really being a time for you to sort of revisit, like we talked about a joy list, you were singing, you were getting into your creative, you were really intentional about creating your space. And it was really, I think like amazing time for you to start to attach to like that authentic self. And I think it's important to say, like, I think it can ebb and flow, right? There were moments where you were really grounded in all that. And me too. And then there are moments that were not. So it's not always like you figure it out and you're there always. Like, I think it's important to normalize, like, we're not always aligned and attached, but that's the work.
That is the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was definitely that. It was like constant change and so much newness. And, at being at that place where I was very aware, I was like hyper aware. How I'm living my life and how it feels, and like taking moments to check in with myself. If things are challenging and I'm feeling like, okay, what's going on here? I'm behaving in an interesting way, or I'm telling myself different things because of this interaction. And so I was just I was just in my life. Like it was not a dress rehearsal. It was I was very present.
Yes.
And with the awareness.
Yeah.
Which is, just a great place to be in when you're
well, and so transformative too. And you and I talked a lot about like that identity piece or roles. Like, what is your role in your family? What is the role in your sister? And then you take this big move, you have this big transformation, and the identity journey, right? You're not a fiance anymore. You're not a New York resident anymore. It's kind of like this discovery time. Yeah.
Like even the road trip, like that was just so cathartic. Being able to literally drive across the country and like, I can feel the energy shifting. I can feel things being left behind. I can feel myself opening up.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, even like seeing the landscape of this massive country, that you can see like the mountain ranges, like how everything is kind of cause and effect, and just made me feel like connected to nature in a way that
that's so important to you.
So important to me. And like, just coming out, like, I started a jam band with a friend of mine.
Yes. Oh my God, that's right.
And even on the way here, we drove past a place I did like an open mic.
I love
performance.
it. There were all these parts of you that were just coming alive.
They were coming alive. And I was at a place where I was like, I don't want to talk myself out of any of them. I just want to express myself and go.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't know. I mean, and it was so interesting. I was at a place too where I wasn't even sure what was next for me. Like, I didn't know that I even wanted to stay in film and television because I had done it for so long, working at, different networks. And I felt like am I over this? Am I past this? Is there something else for me? I don't know. And I was like, I don't need to know. I just need to express. And so, and like,
I love that. I think it's important to pause there and like, like the not, and I think that's what gets so hard because it's so challenging to live in uncertainty and not knowing. And I think that a lot of anxiety comes from trying to know or trying to control. And it's just so stressful and it's so emotional to be in that place. And I think it's so beautiful to be in a place where you can just say, I don't know what's next. And that's okay. And that can be really exciting too, if you let it be.
No, it totally can. And I feel like it was. Like,
yeah.
Hey, let's do this. And then there was a pandemic.
Boom.
It's like, okay. Got it.
Right.
Yeah, that was the kind of a whammy. I had like about 6 months in LA getting settled in my apartment after drama.
Yes, after the drama.
We had a little drama, but I found a place that I love.
I know.
Like it looked like my Pinterest board before I got to LA. It was exactly in the neighborhood I wanted and the style that I wanted.
It's so cool to think about because I always think about things like just metaphorically and symbolically. And like while you're curating the space, like physically, your environment, like you're curating this life. Like this is what I wanted it to look like.
Yeah. And I went all out. Like I loved decorating my home, making it mine, putting the pieces of me that are important.
Asking for help to do that.
For help.
So we worked on that quite a bit.
We did. And I got help. I got help with stuff. And it was just like, I'm filling out this space and it feels like a reflection of me.
Yeah.
And
well, the space too is symbolic for you because you would shrink yourself in spaces, right? So this is your opportunity really to take up space and make your space and make it authentic to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And it still is. It's still there. I still have my place.
Well, things have changed too, but I want to talk about, so pandemic happens, such a hard time for everybody. But I want to talk about the other major change and transition that you made in your career.
Oh, yes. So as we mentioned, I moved out here with a job and, if I'm being honest, the job was like to get me out to LA.
For those listening,
that's a big corporation. And it was rewarding. Like I did some work that I did really love, like genuinely love. And I've also felt really fortunate and blessed to have work throughout the pandemic, uninterrupted. Like,
right, because that was not the case for so many people.
Especially in my industry.
Oh, so right,
timing could not have been actually better. Because I was like, okay, this is pandemic. I'm staying here. It was, in LA where it's like sunny and warm versus New York.
Your walks were your therapy besides our sessions.
Your walk. Like, let me take a walk. Let's go outside. And just being able to, working from home and like not skipping a beat on that was really great. But after a while, I got really serious about joy.
Yes, our joy lists.
Yes,
your joy list.
Joy checklist became everything to me because I was like,
I feel like we should create a manual of all the things that we came up with. I know. Because they're so good.
They function so well.
The tree,
the roots, everything. So I'm like, okay, the pandemic was hard for so many of us. I was isolated and, I was like, what things bring me joy? What can I do for me that just gets me in a better place? And so started listing them out and checking them off of that list and coming from a place of wanting joy and like buoyancy and balance so I can like meet myself.
Oh, I love that word. Buoyancy. Yeah.
Buoyancy. So just that helped me believe myself. It helped me to trust.
Yeah.
That was a big word.
Yes.
We worked through the values. Of
yes.
Trust.
Remember too, we talked about safety in a way where it was like finding the safety within yourself.
Yeah. So I know safety was one of the words that would come up a lot when we talk about, my values. And the definition changed because safety used to mean, a good, stable job and this and that. And it was like, I no longer felt safe in the space that used to occupy that word. Because it's like, it's not safe for me as a spirit, as a person to like limit myself. It's actually not safe. I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not even my best self here. So I'm like, let's redefine safety. Yeah.
And just allowing yourself that flexibility to redefine something, right? Just because it was safe once doesn't mean it's always going to continue to be safe. And that's just the awareness and checking in with yourself. And we redefined a lot of things. We redefined security, financial, otherwise. We redefined success. Like we changed a lot of definitions.
Yeah. And like you asked earlier, like, where does that even come from? Where did these definitions come from?
Yes.
They're not always intrinsic to self or even how you've experienced life. I'm going by this old model that doesn't,
the checklist,
it doesn't actually meet me where I am. So,
and that misalignment causes such turmoil, and without realizing, sometimes we're just in this turmoil and distress and we don't even know why. And when you get that clarity and say, well, why I'm misaligned with my values, like this doesn't feel safe anymore. And I think that's just the power of therapy in any form that you do it, or self-work in any form that you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's great.
It can be so great. Yeah. So great. So then kind of coming to these new definitions, informing sort of what was next for you in your career.
Yeah. I knew I had, so it was interesting. I was in New York visiting family during the pandemic and driving around the streets of Brooklyn. And it just hit me, the joy that I felt just being in such a rich culture that New York provides. And I was like, it was like that last 2% of something, like I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is where I fell in love with film as an art form, was in New York. And I think I had spent so much time working in television in this way that felt disconnected for me. But like returning to New York and like getting that reignited love was like the missing piece to this puzzle. And I realized I went back to my old notebooks and old documents. I'm like, oh my God, I have so many stories.
Yes.
I have so many scripts that are just sitting there collecting dust, digital dust. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I need to go. It's time. And so I made a plan and I quit my job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so this is an important part to get. Before you quit your job, you froze your eggs.
I did.
Which was part of the plan, right?
Yeah.
Because financially there was the, means and the benefits and I have so many clients and I think it's brilliant. I think it's so smart. Even when they're ready to leave a job, they're like, I'm not going to leave yet because they provide this benefit. So if it's okay with you, I want to pivot to the egg freezing part. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
So share here. So I'm gonna ask as if I don't know, but I obviously know the whole journey. So share with me and the audience sort of what started to formulate the decision to do that.
It started. Let's see. I remember the first time I started hearing friends freezing eggs. I was like in my mid-30s. Living and working in New York, in that relationship, engaged. And I felt like, oh, I don't need to do this because I'm in a relationship.
Right.
And we're talking about starting a family. So it didn't make sense for me. And then with everything, kind of happening the way it did and leaving the relationship and leaving New York and all that stuff, I was so caught up in what I had to do, what was right in front of me.
Yeah,
there was a pandemic, there was a job, there was a this, there was a life, and I just wasn't thinking about it. And also, I had gotten to a place where I wasn't completely 100% on board with the idea of having children. I wasn't sure.
And that's so normal too. I think we need to normalize that more. There's so many women that are unsure, and the things they say to themselves about being unsure is so unkind. Like something is wrong with them. Shouldn't they have this maternal instinct? And it's like, no, you don't have to, and you don't have to be, it's okay to not be sure about it.
It's okay to not be sure. And I knew I didn't want to do it alone. I was single, and I was like, I would, if I do this, I know it's a lot of work. Like the benefit of being like over 40 and not having children is you've seen so many people do it.
Yeah.
And there's no disillusion. I'm like, I know how hard that is. I know it's a lot of work. And, I love my me time. I love taking baths and, going on vacations and, all this stuff. So I'm like, is this for me? I wasn't completely sure. And that was okay.
Yeah.
But I knew at the same time, my clock was ticking.
Yeah, quiet clock.
Quiet clock. And so I'm like, okay, there is a part of me that does think I might want to have children. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to date. And then if I date, I'm going to find the right person, and then we're gonna have children immediately.
But don't you feel like too, and I've seen this like with so many women, I froze in my relationship. So I think that's an experience, a different experience, but also the pressure it puts on yourself to date. And how does that inform how you date? How does that inform how you show up on a date? How does it inform like the ability to let the process unfold naturally? Like it just changes so many things about dating.
I'm laughing because you know this.
Yeah.
For the listeners. So at the time when I froze my eggs, I was in a situation.
Okay, so let me tell you what's so funny. I'm reviewing and I'm like, okay, I didn't know this obviously, but until starting this podcast, I didn't know that was a term because I guess I'm old and like not hip and not really on social media until doing this podcast. And I'm like writing it out and I'm like, yeah, that was a situationship. That was a situationship.
That was definitely a situationship. And it started like innocently enough as like a summer fling. It was like, you know what? This isn't serious. He's somebody I dated 20 years prior.
I know.
And he just popped back up in my life. And I was like, oh, this could be fun. And we talked very early about what we wanted in life. And I knew we were not aligned. I was like, okay, he's not serious. I would like something more serious. I was getting to that place because, after moving to LA and starting over my life and then the pandemic, like it took a while for me to actually feel, and also like doing all this work that we were doing together, just to develop myself and just to heal certain things. Like it took a while before I felt ready for a relationship.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
And so I had begun to feel ready for a relationship. And I started dating. There was somebody I started dating when I was in New York, but I came back to LA and that didn't work out.
Yeah. But I remember, my memory, I'm like, I remember we were doing virtual, you were in the city, but we were doing a virtual session. You're like, I'm ready for love. I'm ready for love. And that was that situation. Yeah. And I think honestly, if we lived in the same city, we may have worked out, but we didn't. Right.
So
right.
It didn't. And then I was a little bummed by that. And then here comes this like blast from the past out of nowhere. And I was like, you know what? This could be fun. I really lighten up a little bit. Let's just
take the pressure off.
Take the pressure off. But then it became one thing after another. He was going through a tough time. I was there for him. He started changing his tune about what he might want in the future.
Yes, he did.
Whole situation. So I'm like, okay, am I sticking around to see if he'll come around? But it doesn't feel
well. And that started to come up for you too, right? Yeah. Where it's like, again, this like misalignment. Like you felt it. You felt like, am I dishonoring this part of me? Yeah. Right? Am I dishonoring this part of me that's really kind of clear on what you wanted, at least in the relationship sense? And like, I think there was some abandonment happening of that, what you truly, truly wanted.
Yeah. No, I definitely stretched myself
totally
to meet him where he was, because there is love there.
Well, yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I never really thought that he and I would last as long as we did. We ended up dating like 8 months.
I know. I know.
Back on it, I'm like, how did that even happen? Because, it was like, the kind of carrot dangle of like, from him of like, maybe I might to be in a relationship at some point. And
I don't know.
Maybe. Oh my God. I look back and I'm like, oh my God. But then like, there was also just life was happening and he was going through a tough time with his family. I felt like this is a bad time to abandon him. And then I was also gearing up to leave my job and preparing to freeze my eggs because my job did cover it. Well, somewhat. They like cover it 100%, but you have to pay it up front and then they reimburse you, but you get taxed on the reimbursement.
So, oh my God.
I know. I'm like, I feel like,
Did you know that before?
I did once I started making the phone calls. The information.
That's what's so hard. It's like just thinking about doing the egg freezing, going through the egg freezing and then having to deal with the financial piece of it or the insurance nightmare piece of it is just like another whole layer to it. Yeah.
But I was, I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I knew for me, like, and it was because a friend of mine.
Yes, who will be here on our podcast, thanks to you.
Haley Hall. She and I were just hanging out one day and she said, Allison, have you ever considered freezing your eggs? And I was like, I mean, I hadn't thought about it in years, but she's like, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
I think that's so amazing. I mean, obviously this is the intention of the podcast is just to cultivate these conversations and sort of pay it forward. And I think it can be really sensitive because you don't want to like, I don't know, plant a seed that someone's not ready to hear or hold, or what does it mean that you're suggesting that to me? What does it mean about where I am in my life? But I think it's bigger than that. It's like, if you want to preserve this option, like, sorry, I'm gonna just say it how it is. Like like do it. Or think about doing it or look into it. At least have the information. Yeah. So I think she did you a very good.
She really did.
Deed there.
I'm really grateful for her. And then it opened up the conversation for me to have with other people. And then I started talking to other friends and like, oh yeah, I did it last year.
Isn't that incredible how that happens?
Like, what? I had no idea. Yeah. And so another friend of mine recommended her fertility doctor to me and she was great. And I'm like, okay, there's a whole community and a way of doing this that like, and like just sharing tips. Like my friend who recommended, she said, she recommended to me that I hire a nurse.
Yes.
For injections.
And honestly, I think for me, that was the first time I heard that from you, that was an option. I thought that was amazing because there are so many women that don't have a partner or maybe even a best friend that might do the shot. Like, so I think it's so important to build your support system, whatever that looks like.
And at the time it was actually that same guy, he was still around. And I was like, he lived in New York.
That's right. Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? He's here. He can be useful. So I asked him to come out and he did.
I remember that. So
yeah. That was a good thing that he did. He did.
It's like, I remember where that story went, but okay.
I know. It was like, oh, right. Oh, God, it was terrible. But he came out and just was there to just drive me to my appointments and just make me food and stuff. So that was helpful.
I think and I know that's something that you had worked on. I remember from the very beginning of our work, that was like a big thing, like the asking for help. And like, one of your homeworks was like, pick one person, ask them for something. And so I think it's, to get to that place where you're asking this person, and especially to come out and help you. And especially during this process, it's like, it can be so isolating. It can be so lonely. All these emotions come up, all these things confront you, but ask for the help. Ask for help, whatever you need. And asking for the help might be boundaries, like certain friends that take energy or certain conversations you don't want to have. Like, I think during this, like always, but like during this process, it's so sensitive and emotional. It's like you have to safeguard yourself and you have to just take care of yourself and ask for the help that you need, or like put boundaries on the people or help you don't want or need.
Yeah. No, it's made such a difference of like how I just experienced, because it was like, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of medication. It's a lot of hormonal changes. It's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. And so, and I I had my acupuncturist and she was great, just helping kind of be part of the team. And
that's such a huge, I think, additional resource that is.
Yeah. Like even my fertility doctor, she actually, there is an acupuncturist who's part of the practice.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I know. And I was like, oh, that's great. I was like, well, I see someone and I've already told her about this. And she was like, great, as long as you're with someone and she was so collaborative about it. I was like, yes, this is exactly
well, so you and I were talking about this off camera, and I was like, let's talk about this on camera, but that more of that holistic approach. And I think in certain places it's lacks. I think there's certain things that medical doctors will tell you or not tell you that could be helpful, whether that is acupuncture, whether that's certain nutrition or supplements. And I have an amazing acupuncturist at home in New York. And she had shared with me, and we're actually having an acupuncturist on tomorrow, that they're trained in all like the medical stuff, but medical doctors are not trained in the holistic piece. And so I think that's a gap that needs to be continued to be bridged.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I cannot agree more. I'm like, it's all medicine.
And,
we need to work together. And there's like this misconception that like Western medicine is not plant-based or it's not whatever, it's not holistic. And it's like, but it kind of is though. Like, penicillin is a fungus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there's so much overlap and we're pretending that there isn't. We live in these binaries and it just like makes me so frustrated because
I think that's like everything we're talking about. It's like everything is like, it's in its box. This is the way, this is how it's been. This is how we do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we can shift. We can be.
And even on the other side, like sometimes there are holistic healers I go to who kind of roll their eyes at Western medicine. And I'm like, I want us to talk to
Yes. Let's have let's be friends.
Let's figure this out together because there's so much information about the human body and everybody is different, especially the female body, a cisgendered female body. It's like, it's so complex. And it's like, I'm always asking questions and I'm like, I love the information. I love someone who can just like sit with me and explain to me what's going on in my body.
But I think that's missing sometimes too. Like the time, like I shared with you my experience that I haven't talked about on here yet, but, and I will, like, no one was communicating with me. Yeah. No one was no one was answering my questions. So I think that's an important piece is like the advocation for yourself in these spaces, like to make sure you have a voice, make sure you feel comfortable, make sure people are answering your questions. It's like so important.
It is. And like I would just get piecemeal from like friends or different healers I see or Google searches. And I'm like,
oh my God, the Googling, oh my God.
And I'm like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an acupuncturist.
Google isn't either.
Google isn't either. I'm like, but there are these people who do have this information.
Yeah.
Like, just share with us, Yeah. I know it's time consuming, but like, I think that's a big part of what I do get from some of the more holistic, naturopathic practitioners is that willingness to talk. And some medical doctors too will give that, but not always.
And I think to be fair to the medical doctors, because I have spoken to quite a few, is like there are ones that really want to be able to spend more time and they just can't. And I think that's one of their frustrations, especially in this space where it's like, because it's so emotional and so sensitive, I think there are a lot of great doctors that do want more time. They just don't have it.
Yeah. I think that's probably more of a structural thing.
It's
like the way we approach health care in this country has so many
that could be like a very longer episode and podcast.
But yeah, for me it was I had my acupuncturist. I was taking CoQ10 I was doing meditations and
you were really taking care of yourself.
I was really taking care of myself, eating clean, very whole foods, and like just wanting to get myself in the best possible situation because I'm like, I want to do this and I want it to go well. And it worked out. I had a friend, because the guy, he had to go back to work. So like, it's like a 10-day process. So I had a friend who was able to, I stayed at her house. She was able to drive me to and from my appointment when the retrieval happened. So I had a team in place and it felt like I was taking care of myself.
100%.
And it felt like, a relief when it was done.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Relieved, like this huge weight is off and it's not the end of the road, but there's this one piece of it that's like off your shoulders. And I do want you to share, I think this is important. I want you to share how old you were when you froze. I think that's an important piece. And it's a hopeful piece because I think we'll share your age and then I want to talk about that.
So I was 41.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, which is, older.
I couldn't remember. I was like 41 or 42? 41. Okay.
41.
Yeah.
And, according to Google,
Google.
Good old Google.
Dr. Google.
I think I also had some medical backup with this. Like 41 is actually an age where your estrogen spikes, and then afterward, like,
see, I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
So I was like, okay, well, I'm 41 now. Let's try it.
Let's go.
And I was happy with the results.
Yeah, you and we talked about this, or we shared this, over emails. Like, we don't really talk about numbers because that comparison piece comes in. It could be triggering for people, but I think it's important to just say, for your age, based on what we hear and what we know, and like 35 is the cutoff or the whatever. Yeah. It's like you were very successful in your retrieval. Yeah. So I think that's really inspiring and hopeful for women that are like, well, I'm 40, 41. I can't even do this anymore. Like, there's still time.
There's still a hope. And I remember there was a discussion of, whether or not to do embryos or eggs. And
I had that discussion too. I just did eggs.
Yeah. It's like, it's like you do the embryos and who knows, with whom. And like somebody said, what about the guy? No, not the guy I was dating at the time.
We had the Dr. Rihanna, and she's great. A Dr. Annette Brower. She said, always go egg. If you're not in a committed, she's like, always go eggs.
Yeah. And I even thought about a friend of mine who, is a man who has no plan of having children. Mm-hmm. I even thought to ask him, and I eventually was like, another friend talked me out of it. She was like, he's going to want to be in that child's life. And if you want to pick up and move to Paris, what's he?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you're right. That, like, just knowing him and who he is, he's such a giving, loving person. So, yeah. So I just decided, and then I was like, the sperm donor thing, it just felt like a lot.
Yeah, like, it's just another layer to the
another layer. I was like, let me just go ahead and freeze these eggs, and it was a good number, especially for my age at the time. And so now I'm 43, and they're there on ice.
Okay.
Yes, and afterwards, I healed. Excuse me. I was able to heal from the retrieval, ended the situationship. A moment of silence.
For what we learned after.
After that. And then I remember then I quit my job. It was like boom, boom, boom. It was like everything happened so quickly.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, I'm done. And I remember, like, I put my end date in. I gave him about a month's notice.
Yeah.
But like, I hadn't been reimbursed yet for my eggs. I was like on the phone with them, like, when is this reimbursement?
Yeah, where's this money?
Because I'm not about to be an employee anymore. Like, so we had to like expedite, but got that money back. And I quit my job, ended the situationship, eggs in the freezer, and I remember that summer I was like, I want to have a proper summer vacation.
And
I haven't had a summer vacation since I was like 12. So I'm like, so I took my summer, I traveled, I spent time with my family. And I just remember coming back from all of that, feeling so ready. In a different way, feeling so ready for love and partnership.
Yeah.
Just feeling very clear about it. And it coming from a place not of like, there was a little bit of like, look at all these other happy couples, but then there was also like,
that's real too. I think that's so real too. I think that's to normalize that. It's like the comparative piece, or, I'd like that for myself too, or everybody else is doing this. And I think that happens and it's normal.
Yeah. And it didn't have the pressure on it of like, gotta have these kids.
Yeah.
Immediately. Yes, but like, it felt just different. It just felt like, I remember like I came back to LA and I just completely revamped my dating profiles on the apps. And I researched what's the most effective.
Google again.
My girlfriend. Then I talked to other people who were on dating apps and just heard the different methods of, people use them in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, which I think, people, I think they love them or hate them, but I think that if you can find a way that to engage with them that feels healthy for you, like they're a tool, but I think the readiness is so important. And this is what we want to talk about here is like honoring your own timeline. And I think letting go of like where you should be at what time and all the pressures, because until you're really ready, and whatever ready means for you, healed, clear on what you want, values, goals, like it's harder to meet somebody.
Yeah.
And from the place of readiness, I think it's like you can invite somebody in.
Yeah.
Or see somebody more clearly.
Yeah, no, totally. Like 100%. Because when I first started on the apps, I was like, what is this? This is trash. I was like, dating in LA is really hard. Like there's nobody out here for me. And I wasn't getting that. And it's so interesting because it's a combination of the universe and the algorithms. I'm like, what? Like I got very clear. It came across on my page. My page was much more clear. Also, it was much lighter.
Yeah.
It was much more it was much more just like fun. And like, if I were to meet someone like out in the world, like they used to do in the olden days, like it would just be
IRL.
IRL. That would be like a lighthearted thing. So my page was much more lighthearted, but also clear.
Yeah.
I made it and I also knew for myself that I do want kids.
So you got clarity on that? I got
clarity on that. I was like, I spent a lot of time, working with myself and with you and figuring out who I really am. Like the awareness part kind of moved into the authenticity part. And I'm like, okay, I'm aware of what's going on. Now what? Now like I'm able to like pinpoint, where I'm triggered or where, this like hurt voice is speaking or whatever. And then it's like, okay, get that out of the way. Like it just kind of blows the smoke away. Like I was able to really see myself. It's like, I know that I am ready for a partnership. I know that I would really love to be a mother. I know that I have a lot of stories to tell. And so for me, that meant like I, for so long in television, worked in like creative marketing, which is like, and I still kind of do like professionally, like I'll get hired for those types of jobs as a director, which is great. But it's like, but I'm ready to transition into, making my own films, which I'm doing now, so it's like, okay, I want to tell my own stories in my own way.
Yeah.
And so, I just got very clear. And then it was I tell you, Beth, it was like night and day. The people who would show up on the apps for me. Like,
God.
I got new people. I'm like, who are these people?
I think there's so much power and truth in that, right? Yeah. When you just open your vision or you change your energy around it, then it invites something completely different in.
Completely different.
That's good for anyone listening. Yeah. Good piece of advice, dating advice.
It is. And it was Hinge. Hinge was the app. People were like, which one was it? I liked Hinge the most. I felt like it was, like the prompts, so like the openness and the discussions. And so I dated one guy briefly. It was like cute, but it wasn't quite it. And then I met another guy and...
So yes, tell us who you are now, right? So we've gone through this whole journey, all these transformations, all this healing, growth, bravery to leave New York, bravery to leave your corporate job, to freeze your eggs. Yeah. Tell everybody where, and me, because we haven't caught up, like where are you now?
Yeah. So I met Arvind and he remember I said before, like when I was engaged, like that was just like a checklist of stuff that, with him, it felt like I was clear in what I wanted and also open. So I would get these I like gardening. I'd be out in the garden.
Oh, that's another one of our metaphors. We always use the gardening.
Always the metaphor. And I feel like the garden had messages for me. And I would get these flashes when I was gardening of like, a man who comes with a child who lives further up the coast. Like I was
and
like,
that's exactly,
what? I was like, okay. And this is when gardening is very meditative, which is like open. And then I also knew the kind of man that I wanted. And I was just like, it wasn't about like, get the man, get the house. It was like, I got very clear on how I want to feel in my relationship, how I want to show up to for myself and for this person. Yeah. And how I want this person to show up for me.
And I think what was so valuable for you too, and for anybody, is like the communication piece is so huge. And like you just found your voice along the way. Like, unafraid to express yourself, to be vulnerable, to speak up.
Yeah. And I think we talked about that too, because I found that for myself in familiar settings, like my family life, friendships, work. But like the next frontier is like in the context of a relationship.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we totally talked about it in that way. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And so it's like, use all the tools, the values,
right. It was like, you have the tool, right? I remember this clip so
and
clear.
it's like, I have.
Yes.
And it's helped me because, we have this beautiful relationship. We've been together about a year and a half.
Yay.
Now, and our communication is really, it feels like the backbone of the relationship, because it's like, we're two individuals coming from different areas, and like, couples have disagreements. We have challenges. But
sure.
Like, we're able to talk about them and like really listen and really express and really get to like, where is this coming from?
Yeah. Understanding.
Yeah. Together. So,
and I think about now, like the version of you that came to my office when we first started. And I think if that version of you was in this I don't know if you would have had the tools to do all of the things that or to listen and to communicate and to find understanding. Like, I just think you've grown in such a way that allows you to be successful in this relationship.
Yeah. No, I think I definitely used to run and hide. And sometimes that comes out and I'll just do a check-in.
Check it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing okay. And just reset and just have those difficult conversations. That's a big part of it all. And so it's helped us. And he's, we've moved in together.
Yes! Exciting.
I know. I now live up in.
I know. That's why it was a journey for you to get here today. But I'm so appreciative that you made the trek.
I had to come. I was like, I'm coming. And he has a daughter, 5-year-old daughter. And she and I have gotten really close.
Amazing.
Really sweet. And even his ex-wife, she's obviously part of his life and obviously their daughter's life. And like, we've developed our own.
That's so nice.
Because it's like, we're all in this together and we're all influential in this little girl's life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we can talk, we can go out for lunch, just the two of us.
I think that's so amazing, because I think what can be challenging is, there's these visions that we have of the way it should be, or the way, again, if we're not clear, like we think that we want it to be, and maybe a very traditional vision. And so it can be hard to open ourselves up to something that looks different, but something different can be so beautiful.
It really can. And I was terrified at first. I was like, oh my God, he has a daughter. That daughter comes with a mother. All I heard is baby mama drama. Like, I've heard so much of it. I'm like, I don't want to, I'm afraid. And it's just like, it doesn't have to be that way. And the more I talk about it, I think it's another taboo, because the more I talk about it, the more stories I hear.
It just invites people to share. It's incredible, right? Because so many people
terrible.
Like go through these things in isolation or silence. And so when someone is willing to be vulnerable and share, someone's like, oh, okay, like me too, or I've been through it, or I frozen my eggs, or, I just met somebody that has kids. I'm not sure. So I think there's so much power in conversation.
It really is. And I think people also expect me for there to be angst. And so they're let down when there isn't. I'm like,
you're like, no, actually it's really great. And I'm really great.
It's good. So it's I'm not without its challenges, like anything, but like next month I have an appointment.
I knew it, because you told me you're going to share
some news. We've discussed it at length, and we do want to start trying for a baby.
Oh my God. I'm going to hug you off camera, but oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy.
Me too. I'm a little like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. Because I'm like,
oh
yeah, I'm ready. I see.
Oh my gosh,
he's such a great father, and the way that we are with each other. We've seen each other as co-parents already, and it's like that mystery is gone. Of like, it's different obviously with a baby, but like we know we're good.
Yeah.
When there's another person around who's little. So it's like, we can
So you're going next month.
Going next month just to begin, just to, get all the tests done and just talk to my doctor about it and figure out the real question is, do I work with the frozen eggs or do I work with my current eggs?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want this to end, but I would love for you to come back and share what that journey is like for you, because I think it's again, right, the conversation so helpful to know. We talk a lot about egg freezing, but I want to start talking more about what happens when we decide to do something with these eggs. I'm so thrilled for you.
Thank you.
It's so, so incredible.
I'm happy to.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, one thing you would share with the audience, one way you would say how you would quiet your clock to all the people listening.
I feel like it's a different answer for so many different people. Let me think about this.
Okay, so one way you did for yourself, and maybe that obviously came through in everything that we talked about today, but like if you could do a little like snippet of really what it meant for you.
Honestly, I gotta say meditation is so important, of just being able to quiet your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Because really the clock is just another, I mean, yes, there is a biological part of it, but if you could, it's hard to like silence everything, but if you could really get quiet within yourself and listen to your spirit, it's a different conversation.
Ooh.
And I think things can move for you differently if you're tapped into that territory.
Yeah.
And it's not, you're not alone anymore. It feels, I don't know, for me, it feels like if you're able to tap into something so authentically true, it's no longer just what's in front of you that's working.
Yeah.
It feels like there's something that I can't quite explain or place a finger on that does move things around for you.
Yeah.
So I would say get quiet within yourself.
Yeah. Quiet your voice so you can quiet your clock.
Quiet your thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for choosing me as your therapist. So honored to know you. So honored to see and proud and happy to see where you are now. I appreciate you so much.
Appreciate you so much. So good to see you.
You too. You too.
So I am no longer a coffee drinker. Coffee is something I gave up in revamping my diet for my fertility health, which is very hard to do. But luckily, I found something amazing to replace it with, and that's my morning matcha that I use Kuli Moringa for. It gives me that same ritualistic feeling of having something warm in my hands in the morning without the caffeine. And I have loved having that as a replacement for my coffee. I love this product so much. It is delicious. And I honestly don't miss my coffee. So if you want an opportunity to check out Kuli Moringa, you can use our code QTC25 for 25% off your first purchase. Hey guys, I'm Beth. Thank you so much for tuning in to Quiet the Clock. If you want to hear more episodes and learn more about how to dismantle societal timelines, live life on your own terms, live life fully and authentically, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And you can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Quiet the Clock Pod.